Bob Miller, Chief Exec of the Australian Maritime Fisheries Academy, our co-sponsor, very kindly has agreed to talk to you about seafarer training and other training in the maritime industry here in Australia. He was the inaugural Chief Executive Officer of the AMFA. It was called something different at that time, the Australia Fisheries Academy. And to quote him, he said, after doing that, he went off for a while and had a life. He's been back about 5 years now, and as I'm sure he's going to talk about what the Academy actually does, but I have to say I'm blown away by the range and the level of courses that are done here. So without further ado, I'll hand over for our final speaker this morning, Bob Miller. Thanks.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. And I'd encourage you in the breaks to avail yourself of the wharf in the front of this building. I think you'll find it's a pleasant location, a pleasant surrounding, and I'll be talking about some of the things that are out there as I go through this presentation. So the Australian Fisheries Academy, as it was then, was launched in 1997. Some of you from Australia and South Australia will know some of the names on this list. Our chairman, Hagen Steer, is I guess if you've been kind to him, you'd call him quite a character. But he was very visionary. He in fact spent much of his youth and growing up as a teenager at school on a couple of German tall ships. Anyone that's into tall ships will probably know the Passan and the Passat. He came to the academy and to the fishing industry in the early days with quite clear ideas and visions about training and how important training was in the maritime sector, and particularly in those days in the fishing industry. You'll see out the front here of the Academy a memorial that was built not long after the Academy was established. This is a memorial to fishermen lost at sea. It covers South Australian fishing areas only, and if you've got time, go and have a look at it. It's rather daunting when you look at how many names are on there from the same family with the same surname that have all been lost at sea on the same day. I might just try and go back here because the Academy was built initially in Port Adelaide. I can understand how you had problems with this earlier on. There we are. The Academy was initially built or created by taking over part of this TAFE campus here in Port Adelaide. It was purpose-built for the Academy because at that stage the government understood and realised that it was important to have industry involvement in the delivery of training relevant for that industry. So at the initial stages of developing the Academy, it was in fact called the Australian Fisheries Academy, and it was built predominantly for training fishermen. Now I've used fishermen advisedly because back in 1997 females within the fishing industry, or indeed in the maritime sector generally, were extremely rare. Thankfully, that's changed over the time, and I think the Academy's contributed to that. As we'll see a bit later on, we're finding an increasing number of women in our courses, which we think is fantastic. So the memorial's out the front, as you will see as you go along the wharf. I don't think this likes me very much. When the Academy was established, the common practice in maritime training at that stage, pretty much around the world, but certainly here in Australia and in South Australia, was for that training to be done on essentially a theoretical and classroom basis. And when I came to the industry back in 1997, I came from an agricultural background, where training in agriculture had been going for quite a large number of years here in a very famous institute called the Roseworthy Agricultural College. But the big difference was that agricultural college in those days was highly practical in its delivery. And I found it very unusual that an industry that relies on people working in a very dangerous environment were actually conducting their training and issuing what I would like to refer to as licences, licences to drive vessels, when you can actually get that licence by studying hard, passing a written exam, and then bingo, you had a certificate of competency issued by the Maritime Safety Authority, enabled you to take charge of quite large vessels, crews with lots of lives. So the Academy was originally set up, let's see if this will work this time. No. I think you've got a sticky, there we go, a sticky button here. So the Academy was set up, and you see the Academy logo. The Academy logo was deliberately designed with the Latin, I believe it's Latin that stands for learning by doing. So the Academy, right from the word go, was intended to be a place where people who were going to come and study as seafarers would do so in a very practical sense. And as a result of that, if this button works, yes, you'll find that the Academy has a number of training vessels, and you'll see them alongside the wharf out the front. We also have something we're very proud of, a tug called the K.C. Campbell, has been loaned to us for 90 years, or leased to us at 90 years at $1 a year. And the owners allowed us to turn that tug into a firefighting training facility. Hence you can see the students on board fighting fires. This is a very realistic way of learning how to conduct yourself on a vessel when you're attempting to fight a fire, or attempting to rescue someone from a smoke-filled engine room through a deck hatch, how to get yourself through a room full of foam. So we find this has been highly regarded by the students who have undertaken our courses here, and we think it's one of a number of very valuable assets we have, and very grateful to the person who's leased it to us for $1 a year. We also have a very comprehensive marine engineering workshop, And again, I'd encourage you, if you're out the front of this building on the wharf side, head down toward where the vessels are. You'll be able to see the engineering workshop. If anyone wants to have a look around the academy, more than happy to do so. If you perhaps touch base with Adam, I'm happy to show people around. We're very proud of our workshop, our engineering workshop, which enables us to train marine engine drivers, marine engineers, by actually asking them to show us how they can solve problems, show us how they can demonstrate their competence on real engines that work, and in an engineering workshop which surprisingly works very well. And we're very proud of the graduates we turn out, because we know that they've been tested in the real situation, in simulated situations, and are proven to be competent. That's not always the case, and remember my comments earlier about where the academy came from. I've seen marine engine drivers given qualifications by virtue of reading the book, studying up, writing the exam, and the next thing you know, they're out in the industry as a qualified marine engine driver or a marine engineer. So we're very proud of the facilities we have. We also have wheelhouse simulation facilities, both here and in our campus in Port Lincoln. The early years of the Academy in 1997, for the next 3 years or so, were a time of incredible change. South Australia and the fishing industry within South Australia was going through a rapid period of change, and the part of the fishing industry that was changing the most was the tuna fishery. The whole business of tuna fishing was turned right on its head. So what you'll see here, you can see Port Lincoln. For those of you that are not from South Australia or from Australia, this is where we are on the map of Australia, is South Australia. You can see Port Lincoln diametrically across from Adelaide and on the tip of Eyre Peninsula. The changes that took place in the fishing industry there, particularly the tuna industry, revolved around a whole massive shift in the way that tuna were caught, the way that tuna were kept, fed, harvested and sent to market. And I guess many of you will have heard of the whole concept of tuna ranching in South Australia. The Academy came into being at a time when the industry was changing really, really significantly. This is Port Lincoln. Port Lincoln used to be a really large fishing port. After the advent of tuna ranching, it became the largest fishing port in the southern hemisphere. You can see some of the vessels that are there. See the size of the marina, and because Port Lincoln is such a large fishing port, the Academy created a campus within Port Lincoln, and we have a large number of students from the industry who undertake courses every year in Port Lincoln. The other regional campus that we are really, really excited about will be right up the top of Australia. You can see the map of Australia there. Well, we're talking about an Indigenous maritime training campus of the Academy that will be based in association with Nhulunbuy Area School. The aerial photograph there is in fact an aerial photograph of a high school right up at the tip of Australia, in a place called Nhulunbuy, and that will be the next Academy campus, particularly developed for Indigenous seafarers, for training Indigenous seafarers to take part in the fishing industry in the north of the state, and in fact to assist the Indigenous communities in East Arnhem Land to develop their own fishing companies. Interesting things have happened in terms of the time between when the Academy was established and now, and what we've found is pretty well mirrored across many of the maritime training organisations, particularly those that are associated with the near coastal sector, as the Academy here is in South Australia. When the Academy was created, we had around about 90% of our students coming from either fishing or aquaculture. That has changed dramatically. Now we have roughly 50% of our students coming from the trading sector, with fewer coming, smaller percentage from aquaculture and fishing. And we can see this change continuing to take place. The range of programs that the Academy offers are predominantly aimed at near coastal. We believe that's a niche that we fit into really well, and we also have a number of schools, a number of programs that we offer at schools. We have currently students engaged in a maritime industry pathway, both here in Adelaide and also in Port Lincoln. And that program next year will be expanded to roughly 300 students initially in the Northern Territory. So we believe we're doing two things. Not only are we educating the seafarers of the future, we believe that we're playing a pivotal role in providing a skilled workforce, an ongoing skilled workforce of seafarers for the maritime and the fishing industry in the state. Because of our fishing industry roots, we also offer a range of seafood industry training programs, including things like aquaculture and seafood processing. We train around about 780 on average. For those of you that know anything about training, you'll realise it's a highly volatile area. Our student numbers vary by up to 200 students a year, but our average is around about 781, and we now have around about 10% of the enrolments are females, and that's rising. So much so that we're pleased to say that we also now have a number of female master mariners or mariners who we've engaged as trainers to show that the rest of the industry that we're serious about the need for the industry to tap into the skills and expertise that women will bring to the industry where they have not particularly participated in past. So, and you'll see from these photographs the increasing number of females we have in our courses. Of course, like all good organisations, we have a vision for the future. We have a contract with the Australian Maritime College to deliver a Bachelor of Applied Science. The first stage of that Bachelor out of this campus here, starting in March of next year. And we're excited about that because that provides us with a continual flow-on opportunity for the young people doing maritime pathway programs in the last 2 years of high school in South Australia. We're pleased about that. I've mentioned about our Indigenous training. We are doing a great deal of work in the Northern Territory, where there is probably the largest of the Indigenous populations in Australia reside there. And we're really pleased to be providing training to Indigenous Marine Rangers, who I think we've trained, I think it's about 250 Indigenous Marine Rangers in the Northern Territory at this stage, and that will grow. We're working very hard to get a Marine Engineer Class 3 and Engineer Watchkeeper program up. As far as near coastal programs, that's the Marine Engineer Class 3 is the highest of the near coastal qualifications that we will be delivering. We also have signed a letter of intent with Indonesia to provide maritime training to sponsored Indonesian students once the relationship between Australia and Indonesia kind of calms down a little bit. At the moment, it's a little bit rough, with Indonesia claiming that Australia's been paying people smugglers to take people on boats that are apprehended at sea back to Indonesia, where they came from. So we're sitting and waiting. We've got a 4-year program planned out where the academy will ultimately have 2 campuses in Indonesia, which will be training Indonesian mariners using Indonesian trainers having first trained in Australia under the quality control of the academy, and issuing Australians maritime certificates of competency. It's an exciting thing for us. We're just disappointed that the Australian government decided to have a fight with our neighbours rather than be friends with them. And lastly, we are about to join Western Australia and many other parts of the world with a burgeoning offshore oil industry in this state, and we're gearing up to be able to provide training for the South Australian community particularly, to enable them to take the opportunity of gaining employment in relation to that offshore oil industry. Of course, the Academy, although we like to make out we're not alone in Australia in delivering maritime or seafarer training. The University of Tasmania is the Australian Maritime College is a part of the University of Tasmania. We are a strategic partner with the college. The college primarily focuses on the larger ship qualifications, although it does run a range of programs similar to what we offer. And in the near coastal area, sometimes we deliver more students in a year than IIMS does, and sometimes they deliver more than we do. And just about every state in Australia has a maritime training organisation, and in many of the states there are quite a few. The major ones, though, around the rest of Australia are TAFE, government technical further education colleges that deliver maritime training in a number of different locations around Australia and throughout the different states. The Northern Territory is looking forward to the academy coming up there. They do not have a very active maritime training program at all, and we're keen to take part in that. We also have plans to expand into Victoria. If there's anyone from Victoria, TAFE here, we will be competitors before long, particularly looking at Queenscliff Marina. For those of you that might know Victoria, we've been asked to come and set up a campus there. In Australia, maritime training, seafarer training is heavily regulated. First and foremost, whatever maritime training is done has to be approved by the Maritime Safety Authority before that training will attract recognition by virtue of issuing a maritime certificate of competency at whatever level, what I've referred to previously as a licence. However, in Australia, we are fond of being really heavily over-regulated. And so not only does maritime or seafarer training have to have the approval of AMSA, it also has to have the approval of the Australian Skills Quality Authority. And we are registered by the Australian Skills Quality Authority, and we have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with AMSA that enables us to deliver maritime training of the required standard. both organisations are able to audit us at any time. We're very proud of the fact that recently the Australian Skills Quality Authority regarded the Academy as such a high quality provider that they've actually delegated us. We are, I think, one of 3 organisations in the state that have been delegated as self-accrediting. That doesn't mean we can do anything we like, but it does mean that we're recognised as having the highest quality in our training throughout Australia. The industry in the maritime industry, and particularly the seafood sector of that in South Australia, and this is reflected pretty much around Australia, has recently suffered from a massive exodus of qualified seafarers, experienced seafarers, mariners, out of what has been the traditional area of maritime activity into the offshore sector. We run a certificate of safety training course, and many of you will know what that is. It's an STCW course. We run a course here which is the minimum required for people wanting to work offshore. So we know the numbers that of people are moving out of the fishing sector and the near coastal sector out into the offshore sector, and it's quite sizable, to the extent that 2 seasons ago there were 2 prawn boats in Port Lincoln that could not fish because they were not able to get a Master 4, as it was in those days, or a Master less than 35 qualified master to take that vessel out in its fishing operations for that year. So we've been working very hard to find a way of bringing new people into the industry, and it is an issue. How do we replace those people that are lost out of the near coastal sector into the offshore sector? The other issue is, how do we replace the ageing workforce within the maritime sector? I don't think they're all quite as old as the gentleman on the slide, but we know we are also in the business of hiring highly qualified, experienced mariners, and we know how hard it is. One of the trainers that used to work here is now working in the offshore oil and gas sector. He's 75, and he's now earning, what is it, 400,000 a year, month on, month off. There's no way we can compete with that, and there's no way that the fishing industry can compete with that. And secondly, there's no way he's going to be able to keep doing that for much longer. If you look at the average age of mariners and seafarers, you'll find, particularly in the near coastal sector, the average age is climbing and climbing. So we do have a significant issue that we have to resolve. Otherwise, there will be many, many businesses that will just have to shut down. And I know that's not exclusively a problem for the maritime industry. There are trucking companies already who are saying they'll have to shut their doors because they can't get truck drivers that are of an appropriate age. The last one that walked out the door was 80. It is a significant problem, and it's looking around the room here, it's not that necessarily that big a problem in the area of surveyors, but it is an issue that needs to be kept on the table, and it certainly is on the table in our industry here. And it's one of the driving factors that the Academy has. It's why we're operating in schools like we are, to try and continue to bring young people into the industry. The other problem that is faced by the maritime industry is the cost of the facilities required to deliver that training. We in South Australia are going through a really rough time with our government and funding, at the moment. And one of the biggest issues is the cost to governments of delivering training so that the industry, the maritime and the fishing industry, can have access to a skilled workforce. It's a significant issue for us, and it will continue to be a significant issue, not only in Australia but worldwide. The other issue is, how do we cope with young Australian seafarers who are looking for training berths? It's all very well for us training organisations to be offering courses, and we've partnered with IIMS often to run courses, integrated rating courses, for example, where there are still students trying to complete their qualification. Although there is a shortage of skilled mariners worldwide, there's equally a shortage of training berths. We've got to do a lot of work in the maritime sector to enable shipping companies to understand that if they want a skilled workforce onto the future, they actually have to make training berths available. How do we cope with the fact that many shipping companies are multinational? Even some of the fishing companies in South Australia are now looking for their workers outside of the country, outside of Australia. And those workers will be here en masse on what we call 457 visas, because there will not be the available skilled mariners as we go on into the future. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk to you about the Academy. I'd be pleased to give you some, those of you that would like, a tour around or answer any questions. How are we going time-wise? All right. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have. I believe I'm going to be at dinner tonight, so happy for you to catch up with me there. But thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you enjoy your time here, those of you that have come interstate or overseas, and do take the opportunity to spend some time on the wharf. It's quite a pleasant environment, and particularly have a look at the memorial to fishermen lost at sea. I think the earliest entry on there is 1885, so it's quite an interesting historical thing to go and have a look at. So thank you very much.